How many times have you felt obliged to be strong, even when everything inside you begged for rest? How many times have you loved someone so deeply that you forgot to love yourself? There are those who confuse love with total surrender, who believe that sacrifice is the purest form of goodness. But there's a fragile threshold, the point where virtue becomes martyrdom, and the heart begins to bleed in silence. In Greek mythology, there is a woman who embodies this boundary with painful clarity. Antigone, daughter of Oedipus, granddaughter of tragedy. She was born of a cursed lineage, the fruit of an impossible love between father and daughter, and in her blood she carries the burden of duty, guilt, and atonement. When her brother dies, the king decrees, "No one shall bury him. His body must rot under the sun without honor as punishment," but Antigone refuses. She defies the law of men in the name of love. She buries her brother's body in secret, knowing that the price will be death. And so, the myth begins where most stories end, at the point where love crosses the border of life itself. Antigone is more than a tragic figure. She is the symbol of all who sacrifice themselves for duty, for loyalty, for love, until they are completely lost. How many Antigones walk among us today? People who carry the weight of family, guilt, and obligation, believing they must always do more, who live to repair, to serve, to care, even if it destroys them. She is the mother who forgets herself to be everything for her children, the professional who never sleeps, believing worth is found in never failing, the friend who bears everyone's burdens but never speaks of their own. Antigone represents that exhausted soul who believes that true love must involve suffering, but love that demands the end of oneself is not love, it is servitude. And here is where tragedy is born. In the psychology of the shadow, Jung would say that Antigone personifies the archetype of the sacrificed daughter, the one who lives to fulfill expectations, obey invisible commands, and redeem the faults of her lineage. She loves, but her love is pierced by guilt. She is faithful, but her loyalty becomes self-annihilation. And how many of us do the same? How often do we stay in places that hurt us, relationships, jobs, family dynamics, because we believe leaving would be selfish? But perhaps the real selfishness is to erase yourself just to fit into others. Antigone teaches us a painful truth. Not every sacrifice is sacred. Some sacrifices only feed the cycle of pain. She dies believing she is doing what's right. And indeed, her courage is noble, but tragedy lies in the imbalance. She gives everything and forgets she was alive too. Modern mental health echoes this same myth in different names. Today, Antigone is called exhaustion, burnout, guilt, the caregiver syndrome. She is the person who believes resting is weakness, that feeling is a waste of time, that being loved depends on serving. But the body demands payment, the unconscious demands it too, and the day comes when what once held everything together begins to collapse, because love without boundaries turns the heart into a grave. The challenge Antigone leaves us is not to love less, but to love consciously, to know where the other ends and where your own spirit begins. To be loyal is not to die for love. It is to live with dignity, even when the world tries to bend. You to be good is not to carry all the dead. It is to understand that you were not born to be the tomb of anyone's problems. When we look closely at the myth, we see that Antigone's mistake was not burying her brother. It was forgetting that she too deserved a dignified burial, a resting place within her own soul. Her death is not punishment, but symbol, the inevitable collapse of one who lives entirely for others. That's why perhaps the real question is not, how far would you go for love? But how far would you lose yourself for it? Because love without limits becomes tragedy, and loyalty without balance becomes self-destruction. So if today you feel you're fading away to sustain something, a relationship, an ideal, a promise, remember, true love does not demand your end. It blooms when you learn to say enough, when you realize that preserving your own life is also a sacred act. The love that saves is not the one that dies, it's the one that chooses to live. How many times have you swallowed words that wanted to be born? How many times have you silenced a scream, a no, a stop, because you thought silence was safer? Inside each of us, two forces are forever at war: the voice that wants to live the truth, and the voice that wants to avoid conflict. One cries out for authenticity, the other begs for order, and the heart, trapped between the two, begins to fall ill. In Sophocles' tragedy, Creon is the mirror of that second force, the king who must maintain control, the man who believes that following rules is more important than listening to the soul. He is not only the external tyrant, he is the inner tyrant, the part of us that fears chaos and tries to keep everything under control. When Antigone defies his law, Creon doesn't see courage, he sees threat, because every soul that lives its truth awakens fear in those imprisoned by order. Their conflict is not merely political, it is the clash between the free spirit and the controlling ego. And how often do we wage that same battle within ourselves? We want to rest, but the mind says, you haven't done enough. We want to cry, but the inner voice replies, that's weakness. We want to say no, but fear whispers, they'll reject you. Creon, within us, is the censor, the one who says, don't feel too much, don't want too much, don't speak too much. He is the part that prefers rigidity over vulnerability, obedience over authenticity, and Antigone, within us, is the impulse of the soul, wild, intuitive, faithful to what the heart knows to be true. The tragedy begins when the king silences the daughter, when reason suffocates instinct, when obedience triumphs over love. How many people live this way, obeying invisible laws they never chose, working in routines that drain the soul, staying in relationships just because it's the right thing to do, swallowing their own desires in the name of peace, a peace that costs far too much. In shadow psychology, Creon represents the tyrannical superego, the voice that says you should, you mustn't, you have to be perfect. He believes he's protecting us, but in truth, he imprisons us in guilt and fear. Antigone, on the other hand, represents the authentic self, the living center that seeks to express its truth, even at risk. When the superego dominates the self, the result is depression. The soul falls silent, the body stiffens, life loses color, and the tragedy is that Creon believes he's right, just like so many of us. He believes control means safety, that following rules is virtue, that duty comes before the soul, but in the end, he's the one left alone, surrounded by laws, stripped of love. How many people become Creon without noticing? Parents who silence their children, calling it education, leaders who crush sensitivity in the name of productivity, religions that teach guilt instead of compassion, societies that reward obedience and punish vulnerability. But what dies first in such environments isn't disobedience, it's inner life. The voice of the soul disappears and the body begins to speak through symptoms: fatigue, anxiety, sadness, insomnia. It's the unconscious knocking on the door, asking for Antigone to be heard again. And it's remarkable how an ancient tragedy mirrors our modern lives. Today, the tomb where Antigone is buried alive isn't in Thebes, it's within us. It's the inner cave where we lock away everything we feel, everything we desire, everything we were forbidden to be. Every time we suffocate an emotion so as not to bother, every time we force ourselves to be what others expect, we push our inner Antigone a little deeper into the underworld. But the underworld is not punishment, it's a call to awareness. Antigone's silence is the silence of the imprisoned soul that one day awakens and whispers, I'm still here. And perhaps that's where tragedy turns into healing, because Antigone, even in the face of death, never denies her truth. She proves there is something more powerful than obedience, integrity. She loses her body, but saves her soul. That's what shadow psychology teaches us, that sometimes to heal, we must die symbolically. Let die the version of ourselves that lived only to please, to obey, to prove our worth. True freedom is born when you no longer need to betray yourself to be accepted. So if there's a Creon inside you, the voice that commands silence, that says feeling is weakness, that dreaming is foolish. Look at him with compassion, but say, enough, because order without soul is prison, and duty without love is emptiness. Antigone dies, yep, but her myth remains alive every time someone chooses to be true, even at the cost of the world's approval. There are guilts that do not belong to us, and yet we carry them as if they were part of our blood. Antigone was born into a house marked by tragedy. Her father, Oedipus, killed his own father and married his mother without knowing. And when the truth came to light, their world collapsed, the family was cursed, and shame was passed down as though it were destiny. From birth, Antigone already breathed guilt, and perhaps that is why she believed she had to compensate. To atone for her father's sins, to redeem the disgrace of her house, to pay for the evil she never committed. How many people live like this? Paying debts that aren't theirs, asking forgiveness for simply existing, trying to balance others' chaos through their own suffering. This is one of the subtlest faces of the shadow, to carry others' pain in order to feel worthy of love, as if guilt made us useful, as if suffering purified us. But that isn't purity, it's imprisonment. Guilt is one of the oldest chains of the human soul. It disguises itself as virtue, but it is born from fear, the fear of being unworthy, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of rejection for daring to rest. How many times have you felt that voice within, the one that says, you don't have the right to stop, you must handle it all, if you're not suffering, you're not doing enough. That voice is a direct descendant of Antigone. It is the echo of a mind that learned to associate love with pain, loyalty with sacrifice, dignity with exhaustion. But there comes a moment when suffering stops redeeming and begins to sicken. It's the moment when the soul, exhausted, starts to crumble under the weight of what it tried to save. Antigone believed that dying for love was her mission, but perhaps the true act of courage would have been to live despite the pain. In depth psychology, Jung said the collective unconscious holds the stories we repeat without realizing, and Antigone's story is that of everyone who tries to fix what is beyond their reach. She seeks to restore her family's honor, but at the cost of her own life. How often do we do the same? Trying to heal what is already dead, to save those who don't wish to be saved, to repair what was never ours to repair. There is an invisible line that separates healthy compassion from toxic guilt. And crossing it is easy, because the world praises those who sacrifice themselves. They call it altruism, goodness, bravery, but behind those praises often lie silence and loneliness. Guilt convinces us that if we suffer enough, we will be forgiven, but no one is saved by bleeding. Healing doesn't come from suffering, it comes from awareness. And awareness is what Antigone never had time to reach. She died before us, realizing that redemption does not demand death, but forgiveness. In the language of the soul, guilt is an ancestral wound. It doesn't seek punishment. It seeks recognition. It longs for someone to say, it wasn't your responsibility, but few ever do. So we learn to live as if pain were the price of existence. How many children try to compensate for their parents' mistakes? How many lovers try to pay a loan for a broken relationship? How many professionals burn themselves out trying to prove they deserved their place? This is the burden of the living, to keep believing that pain is the path to love. But when guilt governs, love ceases to be light, it becomes debt, and no one can truly love with an indebted heart. Perhaps what Antigone, and we most need, is not absolution, but inner forgiveness, the silent act of returning what isn't ours, of giving back to the dead what belongs to them, and saying, I don't need to carry this pain any longer. In shadow psychology, this act is called transgenerational liberation, when the soul stops repeating inherited errors and chooses a new path. It's as if we said to our ghosts, I honor what you lived, but I move forward. That is true courage, not dying for the past, but having the strength to keep living despite it. Antigone tried to restore her family's honor, but perhaps if she could speak at the end, she would say something simple and human. I just wanted to rest. And maybe that's what the soul seeks when it feels guilt, to rest, to be seen, to be forgiven, and forgiveness. When it comes, doesn't erase the past. It simply returns the weight to those who created it and opens space for what can still bloom. It is the beginning of the crossing back toward life. They say that where Antigone was buried, a flower grew, a fragile flower with pale petals, born among stones and bones, as if the earth itself wished to remind us that even from death, beauty can bloom. This image, simple, almost forgotten, carries the secret of all healing. Life does not end at the end. It merely changes form. After Antigone is gone, silence falls over Thebes. King Creon realizes what he has done. Too late. His decree killed the body, but freed a truth that even he could not silence. The entire city, once rigid and cold, begins to whisper her name, not as that of a rebel, but as that of a soul who dared to love. And here, the myth changes tone, because Antigone's tragedy is not only about loss, it is about transformation. The love that killed her was not in vain. It planted something, a seed, and like every seed, it had to die in darkness to bloom in another realm. How many times in our own lives must we also die in order to be reborn? Not a literal death, but the small ones, the death of a role that no longer fits, of a love that has passed, of guilt that has already served its time. There is a moment in the soul when suffering exhausts itself, not because it disappears, but because it is understood. And when that happens, something changes forever. Pain becomes wisdom, guilt dissolves into acceptance, and what once was a tomb becomes fertile ground. The flower that grows over Antigone's grave is the symbol of this. It is the body that did not triumph, but whose truth endured. It is the consciousness that awakens after collapse, saying, I don't need to punish myself to be worthy. I don't need to die to prove love. I can bloom even after the fall. In psychological terms, this is the phase of integration. After the descent into the underworld of guilt comes the return to the surface. It is the moment when the unconscious brings to light what was forgotten, and the person finally understands there is no salvation in sacrifice. There is wisdom in awareness. True forgiveness is not forgetting. It is the calm gaze that says, yes, it happened, and I survived. It is the soul that recognizes what hurt, without needing to become the hurt. It is the humble act of releasing the past without denying that it existed, and there is something deeply human in that, because all of us, at some point, have been Antigone. We have all fought for what we believed was right, loved to the limit, and felt that life demanded more than we could give. But the myth reminds us, there is no glory in destroying yourself to prove purity. True strength lies in continuing to love after being wounded, in continuing to believe after the fall, in continuing to walk, even with scars. Antigone does not return to life, but what she represents does. It is reborn in every person who chooses compassion over guilt, in every heart that understands that forgiveness is not a gift to others, but a homecoming to oneself. Perhaps Antigone's tomb exists within each of us, a dark corner where we keep what we cannot forgive. But one day, inevitably, something begins to bloom there. It might be a simple gesture, taking a deep breath, saying sorry, or simply allowing yourself to exist without the weight. And when that happens, the flower of awareness opens, silent, stubborn, eternal. And in that instant, we understand what the myth has always meant. Death is only the mirror of life, and forgiveness is the moment when that mirror stops reflecting pain and begins to reflect light. Antigone is gone, but the flower remains. It is the reminder that no love is in vain, no mistake is final, and no pain is eternal when the heart chooses to forgive. The flower upon the grave is the soul saying, I'm still here, lighter, freer, more alive. What remained of Antigone was not her body, but her echo, a soft murmur that drifts through the centuries, reminding us that love, when too pure, can become a prison. She died trying to honor the dead, But perhaps what the myth quietly asks of us is that we learn to honor the living, including ourselves, because life does not demand constant heroism. It asks only for presence, and presence is a form of love far harder than dying for someone. It is the love that stays, the love that cares, the love that learns to say no. Antigone's soul does not rest in marble. It lives within every person who has ever loved too much, who has ever tried to save, to fix, to redeem. But true redemption is not found in dying for others. It is found in allowing yourself to exist without guilt. Tragedy, when looked at closely, is a mirror, and Antigone's mirror reflects the face of us all, those who at some point confused kindness with submission, love with servitude, loyalty with self-denial. But the myth also shows the way out, the flower upon the tomb. At the end of the story is proof that life always returns. Even when the soul falls silent, time plants something new. Even when the heart grows tired, something within it insists on beginning again, and that something, that gentle, quiet, stubborn impulse, is what the ancients called psyche, the soul that never gives up on knowing itself. If Antigone could speak one last time, perhaps she would not speak of death, nor of honor, nor of justice. Perhaps she would simply say, "Care for yourself as you would for a sacred tomb. Do not let love erase you, nor guilt define you. Life is far too brief to be lived as penance." And perhaps, deep down, that is what we all need to hear, that boundless goodness turns into burden, and that true love, the kind that frees, begins when suffering ends. Antigone is not just a myth about death. It is a reminder that the human soul can bloom even through pain, that there is strength at the end, and eternity in the instant we choose consciousness over sacrifice. In the end, she was not defeated. She simply crossed over and left behind her the fragrance of courage. Here we end another crossing. Remember, memento mori. We are all travelers of the shadows, and every conscious step is a flame that illuminates eternity.